So the question is, if reality is based on a code, can we hack that code and hack our way out of this existence, hack our way out of this reality? Is that possible? That's what we're going to be taking a look at today as we dive into topics from quantum mechanics, philosophy, magic, the Neogenian system. We're going to be taking a look at this idea of, is it possible to hack out of this reality? And it's kind of continuing from where we left off last time. Last time we talked about quantum entanglement and how a physicist said that quantum entanglement virtually proves that this reality is a simulation. So we're going to be, we talked about that last time, but we're going to be continuing on that note and seeing, is reality actually a simulation? I know we answered that last time, but we're going to be continuing to talk about that, but as well as the idea, can this code of existence be hacked? Can we reach a transcendent reality? So that's what we're talking about today. We're going to hear from a computer scientist. We're going to hear from a philosopher, and the computer scientist is going to discuss ways he actually thinks that we could hack out of this reality. It's going to be interesting. I'm really excited about this topic. I think you're going to enjoy it. I know you're going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy it. And let's get started. But as always, please hit like and subscribe, because remember, my channel is about spreading information. The Neogenian system is about creating a new Earth and a new humanity through a new consciousness. So it's about spreading this information so that people can reach a new level of awareness, understand themselves, understand existence. Why? So we can create a better life for ourselves, because this life is not that great. There's a lot of terrible things going on. We can change that though. So anyway, please hit like and subscribe. It helps spread this info around. Also, follow me on Spotify, Dawn of the New Earth on Spotify. That is where you can follow me and listen to the podcasts there and watch them. They have video now, and that's another great way to spread this information. And remember, my new book, the first of 5 books coming out this year on the Neogenian system, releases in exactly 2 weeks, May 16th, Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind. All right. On that note, my friends. Oh yeah, and as always, support over on patreon.com/MorgueOfficial. It helps out a lot, helps grow this channel, and you'll get access to our members only videos. We're having a members only video right after this, because there's a new one every week. And today's members only video is, does your higher self actually plan your entire life before you're born? So that's going to be a good one. You can support on patreon.com/MorgueOfficial at any tier, or tier 2 or higher on YouTube by hitting the join button right below this video to get all those. Okay, enough of that. Let's get started. So is reality a simulation? If so, can we hack it? Or even if it's just based on a code, can we understand that code to be able to escape from it? Now, like I said last time, we took a look at a individual who's actually a physicist, and he believed that quantum entanglement virtually proves that this reality is a simulation. Now, just as a recap, because this is important, why does he think that quantum entanglement virtually proves that we're in a simulation? Because quantum entanglement shows that entangled particles can communicate instantly. And that shows that reality is based on non-locality, not locality. In other words, what that means is, for two things to communicate, if reality were simply material, a signal has to be sent. For two things to communicate with each other, a signal has to be sent from point A to point B. It has to go across some distance to be transmitted. This is not happening in quantum entanglement. It is literally instant. Two particles could be on opposite sides of the universe, and if they're entangled, there is still instantaneous communication. There is no signal being sent between them, and this shows a fundamental interconnectedness, or an underlying reality that connects everything. And this physicist thinks that that means that that underlying reality is a code, that we're in a video game world, because it's like a video game. In a video game, there are things that are separated by distances. One character is over here, and there's a chest over there that the character wants to go get. And in the game world, you have to walk from point A to point B to get the chest. But if you knew how to manipulate the code, you could travel instantly if you wanted to, because the distance is simply an illusion. If you knew the code, you would be able to instantly go to wherever you want. You could hack it. So the question is, can we hack the code of reality? Can we hack the code of existence? Well, first of all, this depends on, is reality actually a simulation? And we're going to look closer at this, okay? Because it's very interesting. I'm going to be reading from 2 articles today that are very important. And these articles come from IAI.tv, and I'll show you real quick. So the first article that I'm going to be reading some excerpts from is by someone named Roman V. Yampolsky, and he is a computer scientist, and he's going to be discussing actual ways that one could hack this simulated reality. But we're also going to be looking at some excerpts from a philosopher, Marcelo Gleiser, who thinks that reality is not a simulation. So we're looking at a computer scientist who thinks that reality could be a simulation and that we can hack it, and then a philosopher who thinks that reality is not a simulation. But regardless of whether reality is a simulation or not, we're going to be taking a look at the Neogenian view of existence, which views reality as a mathematical construct. And this mathematical construct, this mathematical system, is similar to a code. So is there a way to escape and transcend this reality? Because this is discussed not just in terms of simulation theory, but this has been throughout history in many different religions, talking about, escaping this material world, or the cycle of reincarnation, or the Gnostics trying to transcend the material world. All these esoteric systems talking about reality being an illusion or a trap of some kind and escaping is very similar to simulations theory. Simulation theory is a bit like a modern version of that. But this idea of this reality not being the ultimate reality, that there being a higher reality, and is it possible to access that? And we're going to see that people in the past have tried to access that through like magic rituals, and that would be similar to like hacking the code, these magical rituals. So just to be clear, we're going to be taking a look at all this and then examining it through logic and reason and finding out what is actually true. Is reality actually a simulation? Regardless, is it possible to hack it? Is it possible to alter it? Is it possible to transform it? Is there a higher reality, and how do we access it? So let's begin by taking a look at what this computer scientist says, who believes that reality could be a simulation, and there is a way we could hack it. And he suggests ways that we can hack it, and this is very interesting. So let's take a look at this. So Roman V. Yampolsky argues if we are living inside of a simulation, we should be able to hack our way out of it. Elon Musk thinks it's over 99.9999999% certain that we're in a simulation. Using examples from video game mechanics to exploring quantum mechanics, Yampolsky leaves no stone unturned as to how we might be able to hack our way out of it. So there are a lot of people who believe that reality might be a simulation. Like I said, that physicist that I mentioned earlier that we did a video on last week believes that quantum entanglement virtually proves that this is, and we're going to be looking closer at that. You have, I think, people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who thinks it's like a 50-50 shot or something along those lines. I'm not sure why everyone always, it's kind of annoying to me that everyone always references, I guess it's not annoying. It's not annoying, but I just want to point out that it's very often referenced that Elon Musk thinks this. Well, let me tell you, Elon Musk is not a philosopher. Elon Musk, what Elon Musk thinks about reality being a simulation or not has no bearing on truth or reality. But anyway, I just throwing that out there. But let's actually see what this computer scientist, Roman, has to say about it. So Roman says, if successful escape is accompanied by the obtainment of the source code for the universe, so he's talking about escaping reality or this particular mode of existence, by obtaining the source code of the universe, it might be possible to fix the world at the root level. For example, hedonistic imperative may be fully achieved, resulting in a suffering-free world. So he's basically saying, like, okay, why would we want to hack the code? And one reason he's saying, if we understand the source code of the universe, we could probably alter the code to eliminate all the suffering in the world. But he says, however, if suffering elimination turns out to be unachievable on a worldwide scale, we can see escape itself as an individual's ethical right for avoiding misery in the world. If the simulation is interpreted as an experiment on conscious beings, it's unethical. And the subjects of such cruel experimentation should have an option to withdraw from participating and perhaps even seek retribution from the simulators. So basically he's saying, why would we want to do this? Well, one reason is that if we obtain the source code, maybe we could fix all the problems in the world. He's saying another reason is that on an ethical standpoint, we shouldn't be subjected to this experiment. We should be able to escape from it and possibly seek retribution on those who are making us experience all of this. And he continues to say, the purpose of life itself could be seen as escaping from the fake world of the simulation into the real world, while improving the simulation by removing all suffering and helping others to obtain real knowledge or to escape if they so choose. Ultimately, if you want to be effective, you want to work on positively impacting the real world, not the simulated one. We may be living in a simulation where our suffering is real. Okay, so what's really interesting about this is that Roman is talking about this reality being a simulation, but the ideas that he's putting forward are so similar to like ancient esoteric beliefs or beliefs in secret societies or beliefs in magical systems or certain Eastern religions, etc. This is just a modern interpretation of it. You see what he's saying is that the purpose of life could be seen as escaping from the fake world of the simulation into the real world. Well, what was the purpose of life for the Gnostics and the Cathars? To escape this prison planet, this illusion created by Yaldabaoth, the simulator, or Rex Mundi, the king of the world, who created this fake reality and escaping it and transcending it. That was the purpose of life for the Gnostics and the Cathars and a plethora of other religions and systems. So it's very interesting how this is just a digital version of that. And so he says what one would want to do is escape from the fake world and also improve the simulated world and help others to obtain real knowledge or to escape if they so choose. And this is also very interesting because he's saying that basically the purpose of life would be to escape the real world, or I'm sorry, to escape the physical world or the digital world, the simulated world, reach the real reality, and then improve the simulated reality and help other people who are in the simulated reality gain knowledge to escape that simulated reality. Again, incredibly similar to Gnosticism, where you have beings like Jesus Christ, who was considered to be an enlightened soul, who transcended the material world, escaped, and knew how to escape essentially the material world, and was going around trying to tell people how they could escape the material world as well. And this was the whole point of Gnosticism, was to achieve gnosis, or knowledge, to be able to realize that you are a spark of the divine and can leave and escape this reality. So again, I think it's just very funny and very interesting that this individual is expressing basically very ancient beliefs and ideas just in digital terms. And so he talks about, though, I want to put forward something very interesting. He talks about escaping this reality, right? This digital reality that we're in, to the real world. Now, there is a problem here, and we're going to continue to see like how this reality, how he thinks we can hack this reality, how he thinks we can hack the code, which is fascinating. But there is an issue here. There is an issue in terms of thinking that this reality is a simulation or a digital reality and escaping to the real world. And the philosopher, who I'm now going to read from, points that out. This is from Marcelo Gleiser, who's a philosopher. Now, I want to show you this is so important, the big difference between, let's say, a computer scientist putting forth ideas about reality and a philosopher putting forth ideas about reality. You see, a computer scientist is not necessarily a philosopher. It's a completely different field. There's some relationships, but ultimately it's a different field. And you wouldn't expect, people from different fields to necessarily be experts in other fields. So someone thinking about the nature of reality, that's what's happening here. The nature of this is metaphysics. Whenever one is thinking about the nature of reality, you're doing metaphysics in some way. And so when you're explaining what reality is, you're making some sort of statement about what existence is. Oh, existence is a code or something. You're doing metaphysics. And a computer scientist is not a philosopher. Not necessarily. Maybe a computer scientist also took philosophy, but you don't know that that's true. Just like a surgeon isn't necessarily a baker. Maybe the surgeon is also a baker, but you don't know. A surgeon wouldn't maybe absolutely terrible at baking. a computer scientist may be absolutely terrible at philosophy. You don't know. It depends on, what area they have chosen to work on in their life. Maybe they could be a great philosopher, but you just don't know. So this computer scientist is talking about escaping the simulated reality to enter the real world. And the philosopher, Marcelo Gleiser, is saying, there is a problem here. And Marcelo Gleiser says, and again, reference Elon Musk, the idea we're living in a simulation has become common, he says. Elon Musk, for example, thinks it's almost certain we're living in a simulation. But the simulation hypothesis comes up against insurmountable problems, and in the end is an excuse for us not to sort out our real moral failings. So the philosopher Marcelo Gleiser is saying this simulation theory has a lot of problems. And why? Why does he think that this simulation theory has a lot of problems? Well, basically, let's read from a little bit what he has to say. He says that the simulation question started with a 2003 paper by Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom, Are We Living in a Simulation? Bostrom reasoned compellingly, that given our own proficiency with computers and virtual reality, one of the following propositions must be true. 1, the human species is very likely to go extinct before reaching a post-human stage. Or 2, any post-human civilization is extremely unlikely to run a significant number of simulations of their evolutionary history. 3, we are almost certainly living in a computer simulation. So, in other words, he writes, either we disappear, or our successors run simulations, or they don't. So if they do, Bostrom claims, and if this is a little confusing, I'll explain all this. Bostrom's point is that if our species survives the transition to a new post-human phase, the new us will have unimaginable computational powers, and running realistic simulations will be a given. If this is the case, we in the present would be characters in a super advanced sim type game, convinced that we have autonomy when in fact we are the puppets in the hands of the game players. So the basic idea is that if we reach a certain level of sophistication, we'll reach a certain level of sophistication where we can create simulated realities. And then the odds are that we are in one of these simulated realities because another species would have at some point reached that level of sophistication and built a simulation. But there are a lot of problems here with the simulation theory. And we talked a little bit about this last time, and I'm just going to put it forward again, though, for those who might not have seen last week's video. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's called, I think it's just called Are We Living in a Simulation? Shocking quantum discovery. Are we living in a simulation? Something like that. It's one of the more recent videos. Anyway, this is important. So Marcelo Gleiser says, one problem, one glitch in the simulation argument, it is that there's nothing to stop the simulation at one super advanced post-human or alien species. It could very well be that our simulators are, for their part, simulated by even more advanced simulators, which inevitably brings us to an age-old problem in philosophy. Who would be the first simulator? This sounds like the turtles all the way down concept in Indian philosophy, where the world rests on an elephant, that rests on a turtle, that rests on a turtle, and on and on. In the West, it may be interpreted as infinite regression or the problem of the first cause. This offers at least some sort of comfort, given that us present humans and the endless chain of evil simulators are all enslaved by the first simulator. Only the first simulator is truly free, the only one with no preceding costs. Familiar? Okay, so here, let me just explain this really quick. What he's basically saying, there's a lot of problems with simulation theory. One of the problems with simulation theory is that if it's true that an advanced simulation could have, or advanced species could have built a simulation, then there's nothing to stop simulations being within simulations, within simulations, within simulations, within simulations. So for example, in Roman's idea, right, the computer scientist, he's saying, well, all we got to do is escape this digital reality into the real world. But what Marcelo is saying is that there could be an infinite stack of digital realities, and that, so if you imagine a super advanced species that builds a simulated reality, Well, then in that simulated reality, a super advanced species will develop and they'll build a simulated reality. And then in that simulated reality, another simulated reality will be built, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in other words, the problem is that if you escaped this particular digital simulation, you might just be in another level of another digital simulation that's in like this Russian doll type of situation. So the problem with simulation theory is that simulation theory does not explain what reality actually is. And I mentioned this last time, but I'm just doing a quick recap because this is important for understanding existence. So what the idea here is that if you are in this infinite, and this is why he says turtles, he talks about Indian philosophy, where there's this story about someone asking, well, how is the earth held up? And the answer is given, well, it rests on the back of an elephant. Okay, well, what's holding up the elephant? Well, that rests on a turtle. Okay, well, what's the turtle holding up the turtle? Well, that's resting on another turtle. Okay, well, what's holding up that turtle? Well, another turtle. And then it's turtles all the way down. In other words, well, that turtle's on another turtle, on another turtle, on another turtle. And this is the problem of infinite regress. You just go back infinitely because there's no actual ground. There's no, what's the final thing resting on that's holding everything up? It's just infinite regress, an infinity of turtles. So this is the kind of idea when you ask, like, what is existence really? And if you say, well, reality is a simulation, okay, well, what's the higher reality? Well, it's another simulation. Well, what's the higher reality? It's another simulation. And you go all the way back until, you know, it's turtles all the way down. Well, what's the ultimate reality? Well, if you say that, the ultimate reality is material, well, then you have all the problems of materialism. Materialism can't account for what existence is. It can't even account for consciousness. Materialism is an outdated idea that has been refuted for over 100 years. Quantum mechanics has absolutely decimated the idea that reality is material, like quantum entanglement. So the important thing to understand here is that simulation theory doesn't actually explain what reality fundamentally is. And it has that problem of infinite regress and trying to explain what the ultimate or ground or base reality would be. Now, the Neogenian system posits a view that does explain what existence is. And I'm going to be giving you some examples here. So in the Neogenian view, remember, quantum entanglement is this idea where the previous physicist that I mentioned said that it virtually proves that reality is a simulation because things can communicate instantly, right? He says that virtually proves that reality is a simulation. And interestingly enough, he said that he doesn't think that there are really any other theories that could account for that. Well, that's not true at all. There's, of course, another theory that can absolutely account for quantum entanglement, and that's the theory of idealism. The idealism is the opposite of materialism. Idealism says that the ultimate reality is mind, is a mental reality, and that can absolutely support quantum entanglement. I'll give you an example. Remember in the code, I talked about a video game and then the code, and how if you knew the code, you could be transported anywhere in the game you wanted. You could hack the code and you don't have to have a travel or communication. It has that non-local element to it. Well, what else has a non-local element to it? When you go to sleep and dream, you also exist in a non-local reality. When you go to, well, you exist in a localized reality that's an illusion, but it's all based on a non-local reality. And what I mean by that is when you're in a dream, just like in a video game, you can walk from point A to point B to go get something. But if you become lucid in the dream and can control the dream, you can do anything you want. You can instantly change any part of the dream. You could be transported to another place. So a mental reality absolutely accounts for quantum entanglement. And the great thing about an idealist reality in terms of the Neogenian system is it's not turtles all the way down. It accounts for what the base existence is, what the base reality is. So in the Neogenian view, reality is not something like a simple simulation or a video game or virtual reality. It's kind of like that, but it's actually something a lot deeper, a lot more complex. It's a reality structured by mathematical principles. It's a mathematical reality, a mathematical existence, but it's also a mental existence. And why is it a mental existence and a mathematical existence? Because the concepts are actually the same. So if you think of, so reality is frequency, reality is energy, reality is mind, reality is formally mathematical. All these are different ways of talking about different aspects of what existence is. That's because reality is formed by mental sinusoidal waves, mental frequencies. But mental sinusoidal waves, mental frequencies are just mathematical concepts in the formal aspect of things. So when you have frequencies, you have mind, and they're structured formally by mathematics. So reality is a code of sorts, but it's not a digital code. It's not a code on a hard drive somewhere. It is a mathematical code of frequency patterns, and frequency patterns are what allow reality to operate in the way that it does, because when frequency patterns combine together, they form a frequency function, and the transformation of these frequency functions result in a space-time reality. Now, this follows the holographic principle, where wave interference patterns can give rise to a dimensional existence. Basically, what that means is that this dimensional reality is underpinned by a non-local frequency domain that connects everything together, a mental domain that connects all reality together. That's why reality seems like it's running on a code. It's not actually running on a digital code, it's running on a mathematical code. But this mathematical code isn't on a hard drive, it is mind, it is energy. And the reason why that this is not turtles all the way down as well is because it doesn't rely on something previous to it for its existence. So like a computer code requires something for it. It requires a hard drive. So then you'd have to be like, okay, well, what's that hard drive made out of? Well, if it's matter, then you have the problem of materialism. But the great thing about mind in the Neogenian system is that it's all self-contained. It has aseity. It has the reason for its own being within itself. This is also known as being self-grounding. That means that what it needs for existence is not outside of itself. Like a digital computer code requires something outside of itself, it requires a hard drive. Mind, this reality is formed from, only requires itself for its existence. That's because it contains infinite energy that is both positive and negative, that results in zero. It's a net zero. It is a singularity. And so this zero is a nothingness that requires nothing for its own existence, because everything that it requires is contained within itself. In other words, its existence is logically necessary. It has to exist. Now, I have some books coming out that explain in detail these ideas, but a quick intuitive way to understand why this is, and remember, this is a quick intuitive way. The actual more detailed way is many, many pages long. But the quick intuitive way to understand this is, if you think of zero as nothingness, nothingness is eternal. You can't create nothingness, and you can't destroy nothingness. Nothingness has to exist. So zero, not being an empty zero, but a container of infinite energy, must exist logically, and it's eternal. It's always existed and always will exist. So we are a system that has to exist. This mathematical law, this mathematical structure has to exist. And this is what guarantees our eternity, by the way. We are eternal beings. There is no way for us not to exist. Energy can never be created or destroyed, only transformed. So we can go through many various transformations, but we cannot be destroyed. So understanding reality in terms of numbers and their relationships isn't a new idea. This goes back to ancient thinkers like Pythagoras, who said all is number. And even Plato proposed this idea in the Platonic solids. And ultimately, though, his idea was rooted in the domain of forms, which contain like the mental blueprints of reality, the mental forms of existence. So when we talk about hacking reality, so the question is, can we? So there is a more fundamental reality than the one we exist in right now. The reality we exist in right now is a projection of frequency patterns. We can access a higher reality. We can transcend the higher reality, and we can access the frequency domain, and we can also access what we call CFDs, or other collective frequency domains, or what people would commonly call today like alternate dimensions. So the idea is that even though this isn't a digital reality, this isn't a simulated reality like being on a computer code, there is a way to access other domains of experience. And so the question is, how do we do that? How do we hack this mental mathematical reality to access these other domains of experience? And we're going to be talking about that in a second. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit more about what this computer scientist thinks about hacking the code of reality. Because even though we know that this isn't actually a digital code, even though we know that this isn't actually some kind of, we're not on some hard drive somewhere. It is code-like because it's formally mathematically structured. So it has similarities. So let's read what this computer scientist has to say, because there's some very interesting ideas here, and I want to share them with you because I think that they're very interesting. So Roman says, the computer scientist says, although to place our work in the historical context, many religions do claim that this world is not the real one, and that it may be possible to transcend or escape the physical world and enter into the spiritual/informational real world. Now, do you see the similarities about what I just discussed and what he's talking about right now? He's talking about ancient religions that say that this world isn't the real one, and it may be possible to transcend or escape it and enter into the world of, what does he say? Spiritual/informational, the spiritual/informational real world. And isn't that interesting how he equates the spiritual domain with information, spiritual/informational. Let me make sure that I don't hit my microphone here and that it goes off. But you see when we, and that's exactly right. Whenever we talk about the spiritual domain, we're talking about a metaphysical domain that is a domain of mathematical frequency patterns. It's not anything mystical or woo-woo. It is a system of mathematical frequency patterns that projects a transformation of the space-time domain in which we're able to experience in a localized existence. In other words, it's a transformation. It's another way of looking at, let me put it this way. This is a real simple way to understand it. So here's this pin, right? If you're looking at the pin this way, it looks like a circle. If from this perspective, it's a circle. But if you transform the pin, you see now it's not a circle. It's it has a dimensionality. It's a line, right? I mean, it's more than a line. It has thickness and everything, but you get what I mean. It's a different shape. It's a different pattern. And so this object, depending on how you represent it, can have different ways of being experienced. So you can think of sort of the frequency domain as being like the circle aspect, and then the space-time domain as being like this dimensional aspect, the information that can be expressed in spatial and temporal terms. But now, again, it's not exactly like this, but talking in terms of Fourier transforms, this is a quick and easy way to understand how information can be represented in different ways depending on the particular transformation that it takes. So the spiritual informational frequency domain can express or project this dimensional reality. And not just this one, but other ones can be projected as well, which we're going to be talking about in a second, which is, like alternate dimensions, or what people would commonly think of as alternate dimensions. But so I think that this is a very interesting that he is acknowledging this. And let's continue to see what Roman also says. So Roman says, in some religions, certain words, such as the true name of God, are claimed to work as cheat codes, which give special capabilities to those with knowledge of correct incantations. So he's talking about how, okay, well, he's sort of comparing the digital computer simulation reality to ancient religions. And he's saying in ancient religions, if you know certain things like the true name of God, you get certain abilities. And he's saying that's similar as like a cheat code or hacking the code, right? These magical incantations or these magical names. Now, I'll tell you what understanding the true name of God archetypally represents. So remember, archetypally, naming the true name of God isn't like, for example, I think it's in the story of Lilith, where Lilith utters the true name of God, and then she gets wings and she's able to fly away and become a powerful being. Something like, it's been a while since I read it, but something like that. So what understanding, what we can interpret the true name of God as meaning is not like, oh, if you know this special word and say this special word, you're going to literally grow wings, or you're literally going to be able to levitate, or you're literally going to have these special powers. No. So what's the true name of God? Well, first of all, the true name of God in Exodus 3:14, I believe, Exodus 3:14, what's the name of God? I am. So in other words, knowing the true name of God is knowing how existence works. And I am is the I, the me, not the ego I, but the absolute I, the God, all reality, the truth of what we are. Remember, know thyself and you will know the universe and the gods, because you are the universe and the gods. And so the idea here is that when you understand the true name of God, when you understand the source code of existence, you will gain special powers. And these special powers are like in the Gospel of Thomas. Basically, Jesus Christ in the Gospel of Thomas says, when you understand the secret, you will be disturbed, then astonished, then rule over the all. And what does this mean? Well, first you'll be disturbed because you'll be like, oh, this is like the dark night of the soul, where, oh my God, everything is not what it seems. Then you'll be astonished and in wonder because you'll understand what existence is. And then you'll rule over the all because you will realize what you truly are. And what you truly are is actually one of the programmers, quote unquote, programmers in a metaphorical way of this existence. We are all the programmers of this existence. So when we realize this, we will be able to transcend this existence. Just like, remember how he said, the guy said, people who transcend this reality into the real world should help others in the simulation to gain knowledge so that they can escape as well. Well, this is very similar to what we are doing in the Neogenian system as the new beginning. We want to create a new humanity and a new earth through a new consciousness. We are those who are at a level of consciousness where we're helping others achieve higher levels of consciousness as well. But we'll see that escape is a lot different. The way that people try to escape this reality is not the real way that one should escape reality. And we'll be discussing why that is, why everyone does it the wrong way, which is just going to keep them in a cycle of incarnation over and over and over again. So we're going to discuss that in a minute. But I think that that's really interesting how this individual who's a computer scientist is intuitively getting to a lot of right ideas, but he's taking them too literally and not, he's basically intuiting that this isn't a real reality and there's a way to escape it. But he's talking about either like reality being a code or how people in the past, used magic rituals or the name of God, etc. When these are representative, it's not actually how reality is. They are metaphors. So, but let's continue here because this is interesting. Roman continues by saying, other relevant religious themes include someone with knowledge of external reality entering our world to show humanity how to get to the real world. And this is exactly what we are doing here in the Neogenian system. Now, it's possible that many of us have chosen to localize in this world to help others achieve higher states of consciousness. Now, do we know that for sure? No, we can't say that for sure, but it's very possible that that is the case with many individuals, many souls, many zetas that have incarnated or localized to help others reach a higher place. Now, we don't, again, like I said, we can't know that for sure because of the filtering mechanism of the brain, but ultimately it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you chose to or not. What matters is that we make a difference and help others transform and reach higher states of consciousness. So that's what we're going to be talking about. But I really like how this guy is hitting on very important points, very important ideas, but from like a computer science interpretation, which isn't quite right, but it's getting close. So similarly to those who exit Plato's cave and return, similarly to those who exit Plato's cave and return to educate the rest of humanity about the real world, such outsiders usually face an unwelcoming reception. And so he's basically saying that those who do try to liberate others are going to have an unwelcomed reception. And you can look at that in terms of Jesus Christ being crucified, or you guys can probably relate to that when you try and talk to people about higher consciousness or what ultimate reality is, and people think you're crazy or weird and just want to talk about the latest TV show or something that's very trivial and related to the material world, and they think you're strange. So that's basically what he's talking about here. It is likely that if technical information about escaping from a computer simulation is conveyed to technologically primitive people in their language, it will be preserved and passed on over multiple generations in a process to the telephone game and result in myths not much different from religious stories surviving to our day. So I'm not exactly sure if he's I think what he is saying is that it's possible that there are people who have escaped this reality, this digital reality, then entered this reality and tried to tell people technical information in the past about, oh, well, this is a code and you can escape it. But they obviously don't understand things like computers and codes. And so they don't understand it. And so they put it in terms that they could understand, like magic words and magic rituals. So that's essentially, I think, what he is saying here is that, oh, perhaps people who have escaped the simulation have entered the simulation again in the past to try and tell people that this is a code and that it's a digital reality, but they didn't understand it. And so this is where all the myths and legends of like magic rituals and different ideas came from. I think he might be suggesting that. But what's really ironic about this is that, so in the past, right, they didn't understand digital code or technological information. So they talked in terms of what reality is, right? And they talked about reality in terms of the consciousness and information they had that day. They, people who came up with these religions and these ideas and these philosophers had an intuition that this is not the real world and there's a way to access a more real reality. So in terms of where they were at in their time, they would talk in terms of magical rituals or achieving gnosis or whatever. That's how they would talk about it. Now, the ironic thing here is that someone like Roman has the intuition that this is not a real reality and that there's a more real reality. But you see what's happening is he's talking in terms of the consciousness and technological information that he has, which for him is a digital code in a simulated reality. But that's not actually true. Again, it's something higher than that. It's that this is a mathematical mental existence and that we are eternal minds that have projected this reality, which is a construct of nothingness, that it has various transformations due to the particular arrangements of frequency patterns and frequency functions that we are experiencing and growing and learning and able to optimize and transform and create higher and more intricate transformations through the knowledge of ourselves that we gather. This is very similar to the Hegelian idea of absolute idealism, where a logical construct of mind projects a natural world in which it enters into consciousness and achieves knowledge of itself. But anyway, do you see what I'm saying? Is that, the writer is pointing out, oh, the people in their time expressed it in the best way they could because they didn't know about such and such. But you see, he's doing the same thing where he's expressing it in terms of digital code and a simulation when it's not actually that. It's something higher than that. So it's just ironic that he's doing the exact same thing here. But we're going to talk about like how to actually escape and whatnot. And by the way, these are very, very long articles. I'm just reading little excerpts from them. If you want to read the whole thing, they're all on iai.tv. But let's talk about some interesting ideas about how he thinks we can hack. Because now that we know what existence is, we know what he thinks existence is, and I've articulated what the Neogenian system says this reality is. Not a simulation, but a mathematical code, a projection of a frequency domain, a mental domain, a spiritual domain. But remember, it's a rational reality. It's not a mystical or woo-woo sort of thing. It is, I hate the word woo-woo. We need a better word than that. But it's not a mystical sort of thing. It is a rational, logical projection, right? Then it's the whole point of the Neogenian system of meta-rationalism is that we can understand the metaphysical domain rationally and logically. But now let's talk about the idea of hacking it or transcending it or escaping this reality. Let's see how he thinks we can do it. And then let's look at the Neogenian understanding of how to do it. So Roman says numerous examples of hacks of virtual worlds, games, and hardware could be studied as practical examples of escaping from human-made virtual worlds. A canonical example is the jailbreaking of the Super Mario World game. So what's interesting is that he's saying, okay, how do we escape this virtual reality? Well, maybe we can understand it by studying how we can break out of things like video games. And he's using an example of Super Mario World. So there is a certain Super Mario game. I don't think it's Super Mario World, but it's another Super Mario game where you can actually beat the game. And it's something crazy. It's like 17 seconds. because if you do a certain it's like if you run forward, then run back, then jump 3 times, then jump on a turtle, then throw the turtle, then go down a pipe or whatever. You do this certain thing in a certain way, in a certain order, and it ends up behind the scenes changing the code in a very specific way that it, bam, transports you to the end of the game, which is really cool. You should go watch one of those. It's like Super Mario speed run or something. It's really interesting. I think they have some documentaries on it too. It's really cool. Speedrunning and hacking games is a really cool idea. But he's basically saying, okay, well, maybe let's study these games to understand how to hack our way out of this digital reality. He thinks it's a digital reality. So he says, talking about Super Mario World, since it was possible to write code with precise Mario movements and spin jumps, that implies if Mario was sufficiently intelligent, he could discover and code this hack from within the Super Mario world, assuming Mario's actions are writing to the same memory locations as actions from the controllers used to generate Mario's actions. So there are 2 tables here, and it's really interesting. So he's going to compare hacking a video game to a magical ritual. And he says table 1, the hacking the video game side, shows a specific subset of actions which leads to multi-byte writing. Many such action sequences will not work as intended if Mario's location is off even by a single pixel. So it is just as important to have metadata for implementing the action as to know the necessary sequence of actions. So for comparison, table 1 shows an ancient magical spell which reads similar to the action sequence on the left, for which we don't have sufficient metadata, which can explain why all magical spells fail to work in practice, even if they correspond to working hacks in our universe. So this is a really interesting idea. He's basically saying here, look, in Super Mario World, there is a certain pattern of things that you can do. And if you do them correctly, you can hack the game. And like I said, in one Super Mario game, it takes you to the end of the game. And he's saying if Mario were conscious in the game, like if Mario, if you weren't controlling Mario, but if Mario was actually conscious and knew this, then the Mario in the game could do those sequences of actions. If he had that metadata and knew the sequences of actions, he could hack the code and be transported to the end of the game or whatever he wants to happen. And he's comparing this idea of hacking a video game to magic rituals. And so he compares So this is an example of hacking the Super Mario game. It says, jump off Yoshi, go to the sub-level, come back, grab the P-switch, get Yoshi from the Yoshi block, glitch 4 berries, take a hit from a Koopa so Yoshi runs off screen, destroy the shell on the ground, grab Yoshi from the block, eat the 2 most recently glitched berries. So if you do all those things in the game, something will happen. Most likely it'll, it rewrites the code in the background and it transports you to the end of the game. So he's comparing that then to a magical ritual. Take a lion club and slaughter it with a bronze knife and catch its bloods and tear out its heart and put its blood in the midst and write the names of angels in blood upon the skin between its eyes. Then wash it out with wine, 3 years old, and mix with the blood. So he's kind of saying that he's comparing magical spells as like these video game hacks, but just ones that have failed, that don't actually work. But he's saying, like, look at the similarities. These magical spells are like ways to hack the game. And do you see the comparison here? Because like in the Mario game, if everything is a code, if Mario jumps 3 times, eats 3 berries, gets on Yoshi, kills a Koopa, runs back 2 spaces, then runs forward 2 spaces, because everything is a code, that's changing the code in a certain way. And he's saying that, and if you change that code in that certain way, in that very, very specific way, something happens, like it transports you to the end of the game. And he's saying compare that to magic rituals, where if reality is a code, take a club, slaughter a lamb, write the names of angels in blood, use 3-year-old wine, mix it. He's saying that, well, that would possibly change the background code of reality and then something could happen. But he doesn't think that these magical, he thinks that they fail because we don't have metadata of how the code works. But he thinks that that's kind of like what's happening here, which is a very interesting idea. Remember, we're talking about how he thinks, one can hack reality. And we're going to be talking about, is this logical? Is this rational? But we'll see that there is a way. But I think that this is really interesting nonetheless. So real quick, I want to give you some ideas that he puts forward as to how to hack reality. One way, he says, is cause a simulation shutdown and hopefully our extraction by generating incomputable paradox. So he wants to figure out, he thinks one way is to possibly break the simulation, the whole game, by somehow generating an incomputable paradox, a paradox that cannot be computed. And then that will crash the simulation. Another way he thinks is create a simulated replica of our universe, place an AI into it, watch it escape, and copy the actions of the AI. So create a simulated reality of ourselves, put an AI in it, see how that AI escapes, and then use that information for us to figure out how to escape. Another approach is to attract the attention of the simulators. Assuming that the simulation is being monitored, then it might be interesting if we decided to build a monument commemorating our realization of this. This monument would act as a signal to our monitors. We suspect you are there. We suspect you can see this. We suspect we are in a simulation. So this idea is to like create a large structure, like actually build something that symbolizes our recognition that we recognize that the simulators exist, and then maybe hope that they pull us out because we've recognized it. But do you see how similar this is? What's so funny to me is that this is just religion in terms of digital, because this is like creating an altar to a god. Here it's creating a structure for our simulators so that our simulators will realize that we know their existence and that they'll come save us or something. Where that's very similar to creating an altar for a god and being like, we believe in your existence, God, and come save us, come bring us to heaven. Like it's so funny to me that it's so similar to. I hope to goodness that this doesn't take off and that that would be awful if this actually becomes a digital religion and then people, instead of worshiping God, start worshiping the simulators and building shrines to the simulators and things like that. And he also says attempting to keep our escape plans secret via quantum encryption might be a good idea. So if we're trying to create a escape plan, we might want to encrypt it so that the simulators don't figure out that we're trying to escape. He says we're currently in the very early stages of researching possibility of escape, this being a first research paper dedicated to this topic, a first step. So this is a very serious research paper saying that, hey, he's saying that, look, this is the first research paper dedicated to this and seriously researching and discussing possible ways to escape this. So this is, a lot of this is, well, it is speculative, but this person's taking it very seriously and suggesting that we need more research on this to like seriously actually try and escape this reality. He says, we currently have no capacity to read or write the simulation source code and don't know if our attempts at social engineering might have an impact. Our best bet is to investigate the structure of our universe at the smallest scale, quantum mechanics, in the hopes of detecting exploitable effects. Progress in quantum mechanics should be helpful for better understanding our simulations and options open to us, and perhaps even developing an actionable escape plan. Essentially, every novel quantum mechanic experiment can be seen as an attempt at hacking the simulation. So what's so interesting about this is that he gets very, very close to understanding certain truths about reality, but like people in ancient times who put things in terms of magical rituals and contacting gods, he's putting things in terms of digital realities, digital codes, and contacting the simulators. And he's right that studying quantum mechanics is very fruitful in understanding how reality works, but not in terms of it being a digital code. So let's talk about how reality actually is. All right, we've seen it's not a digital code, it's not a simulation, because this contains many problems in that it doesn't explain what the root reality is, it doesn't explain what the true reality is. There's a lot of issues with this. So this is a mathematical reality. There's no way, for example, for us to generate an incomputable paradox in this reality, because this reality doesn't run on a man-made computer code. It is a perfect mathematical code. And in this perfect mathematical code, if there was some kind of error, all of existence would collapse. Reality exists because there can be no errors in it. It is a perfect structure. You cannot generate within it something that would break the structure. Okay, so while we can't literally hack our way out of this reality, because remember, this is not a digital reality, it's based on a mathematical code, what we can do is alter our state of consciousness to a higher domain, okay? So the great thing about this is that we aren't just digital simulations. What we are eternal souls, what we call zetas, which are systems of eternal frequency patterns. And these are systems that are a triune concept, mathematically, a 1, a 0, and an infinity. It is one mind that contains infinite energy, that's perfectly balanced, that nets to 0. So it's an eternal entity of information transforming frequency patterns where energy can never be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed. And this reality is built from all the frequency patterns of existence, which means that it originates in all of us. In other words, it's like a collective shared dream. It's not an individual dream. That's why it doesn't change based on our thoughts or moods, because it is contributed by, our contribution is very minimal, because it's the entirety of reality is based on every single mind contributing its individual frequencies to existence. So, but the good news about this is that what we truly are is a being of frequency. And we're just tuned into this particular reality right now. So our bodies, our avatars, are interfaces for what we truly are, which is a being of frequencies. So our bodies are kind of like virtual reality headsets. When you put on a virtual reality headset, it seems like you're in a VR world, because your consciousness is tuned to that information and you're picking up signals that are simulating a reality. So when you are a mind, well, you are a mind. When you are a mind that interfaces with the body interfacing with the body is like putting on a VR headset. It is localizing your experience. It is filtering your experience down to the particular reality that's in your immediate vicinity. And it's the body has developed this way due to evolution so that you can survive, because you need to be aware of your immediate surroundings to look out for predators and ensure your survival. And so via evolution and natural selection, this leads to an avatar that has a very high degree of a filtering mechanism, which also filters memories from your past lives as well. This is why you don't have memories of your past lives, because your avatar has developed for your survival. The first phase of this game of existence, there's 3 phases: survival, planetary civilization, and holos independence, okay? And these are the keys to understanding how to transcend this reality and reach higher domains of reality. The survival phase is all about an avatar developing that can simply survive and support consciousness. And so it supports, when I say supports consciousness, I mean consciousness in terms of self-awareness. The avatar itself is not self-aware. You as a zeta interface are a subjective entity that interfaces with this avatar that has the capacity for developing self-awareness, because it has that capacity within itself. That aspect is a function that occurs due to metacognition, thought thinking about itself. That's how the ego develops, which is the center of your field of consciousness, which develops as soon as you think, oh, I am an I. Whenever the concept of I, immediately you have metacognition, because you are thought reflecting upon itself. This is the beginning of self-awareness through metacognition. So the first phase is survival. This is all about developing an avatar that will survive and support consciousness. Then comes planetary civilization. Planetary civilization is when all the minds associated with a particular planet begin to realize that we're all connected, ultimately, and go from self-awareness to all-awareness, and ultimately hyper-awareness, but to keep it simple, from self-awareness to all-awareness, where they realize that we're all connected, and thus build a united planetary civilization. And that's exactly what we aim to do in the Neogenian system, is creating a teleocratic planetary civilization. Teleocratic meaning telos, purposeful, for maximizing the quality of life for all. Then finally, You get to the third phase, which is holos independence. Holos independence is when minds have evolved to such a high level of all awareness and network consciousness that they no longer require to interface with an avatar in this particular domain and can create their own, basically like their own alternate dimension. We call this a CFD, or collective frequency domain, because these minds pool their energies together, their frequencies together, to create a domain in which they can exist in their own domain. But that is just one of many CFDs, one of alternate dimensions. And you can also tune to the frequency domain itself. Now, how does one do this? This happens in our current situation through altered states of consciousness. Altered states of consciousness like meditation and void states, psychedelic states. Remember, never do anything dangerous or illegal. Be very careful. You don't have to do these things, but they do alter your consciousness, which allows you to access these different modes of experience. So, for example, sometimes in these altered states of consciousness, you experience reality as being composed of waveforms or frequencies or vibrations. This is you tuning into the code of reality. This is you tuning into the underlying frequency domain that forms existence. Other states, such as those provided by DMT, have you experience completely different domains. And it's possible, we don't know for sure, but it's possible that these are actual domains unto themselves, other CFD projections that we are experiencing where other entities exist there. We don't know that for sure. It could be an expression of our own archetypal structure of our mind, but I think evidence points to that it is more than that, and I think that it is more than that, and I think that that allows us to connect to other domains. So in other words, look at it. Our consciousness is like a radio. In essence, what I'm saying is our consciousness is like a radio, and by adjusting it to pick up on different frequency patterns, we can access higher levels or alternate levels of reality, and we can interact and perceive with different aspects of existence. So it's kind of, another way to think of it is kind of, because I know a radio is kind of outdated, but it's like if your mind is a television, let's say your mind is a television and you're watching a particular show, you're watching some show on Netflix. Well, you're tuned into that show. But if you want, you can tune out of that show, select a different show, and then tune into that show. You have all these shows that exist, and you can tune into whatever one you want to experience. Our avatar is evolved to tune us into the show, the experience of this reality. But by altering our experience, we'll be able to access different modes of reality. We experience that right now through altered states of consciousness. It is likely in the future we will be able to increase this ability through technological advancements such as brain modulation, where we can lift the filter of the brain and allow it to access the frequency domain, or CFDs when we start getting into the idea of things like brain modulation. But this requires our understanding of the frequency domain of existence. So accessing other domains of reality isn't like opening up a portal somewhere in the physical world. It's about altering our tuning function of the brain so that we alter the filtering mechanism to allow us to tune into other domains and other dimensions. So what this means though, right? Like we can catch glimpses of these other realities. We can catch glimpses of these different domains, but we have to understand, like, how do we escape, right? It's not about hacking the digital code. And so this journey of that we're on isn't about escaping. It's about transcending. And this is really important because this involves learning and growth. So like I said, we are all minds, and interfacing with these bodies gives us access to training data, essentially, experience that allows us to evolve and grow. If you think of how an artificial neural network works, it's a neural network with various nodes. It gathers training data, has a certain output, and the more training data it gathers, the better output it can produce. So we as zetas or souls or minds are like nodes of a network, and interfacing with bodies, various lifetimes, gives us training data. That's why we incarnate again and again and again, or in our terms, localize again and again and again. We relocalize to gather more and more training data. This training data is about understanding ourselves and understanding existence. So the idea here is that in order to transcend, we have to master reality. It's not about hacking or escaping or trying to reach nirvana or trying to reach heaven. All these things are distractions and will just keep you away from the transcendence of another domain. So It's not about escape, it's about transformation. So you can think of it not like escaping, but ascending a staircase of understanding and awareness, or like different levels or grades in school, going from kindergarten to high school to college. You can't just immediately go from kindergarten to college. You're not going to know what the heck is going on. You have to go through each stage. Likewise, humanity, us, souls, zetas, have to go through stages of growth to be able to access the higher levels of reality, the higher levels of existence. So this entails going through the 3 stages, the stages of survival, which is the one we're in right now, transitioning to planetary civilization, where humanity reaches absolute awareness, all awareness, and builds a planetary civilization where we're focused on increasing our knowledge and consciousness and experiences and maximizing quality of life for all. And then finally, holos independence, where we are at the level where we are working together in such unity and cohesion with knowledge of what we are together. We will be able to form our own CFD, or collective frequency domains, and begin to have access to those other domains of experience. Now, in between that time, we'll be able to catch these glimpses of this other reality, like I said before, such as developing technology for brain modulation to alter the filter of the brain, things like that. Those are all possibilities. We catch glimpses of that through altered states of consciousness now. But the ultimate thing to realize is that to, escape, I don't like calling it escape, because it's not about escape. It's about transformation, because we are the programmers. We are the gods of this world. So there's no God to call out to. There's no programmer that we need to build a monument to. We are the programmer, and we need to realize that. We need to look within, and this is what's been said for thousands of years. Know thyself, know thyself, know thyself, and you will know the universe and the gods. Understand what you are, and you will begin to know the steps you need to take to transform reality, which I said before is getting humanity to reach all awareness, building a planetary civilization, and reaching holos independence. There are all these stages that we have to go through. So this staircase is crucial for reaching the states of awareness where we can tune into different domains of reality. So in essence, tapping into higher dimensions and realms is about expanding our minds and aligning ourselves with the universe's fundamental mathematical nature. So it's not about escape. It's not about hacking. It's a process of growing and integrating more with reality and ourselves and each other. It's not about escaping the material world. It's about going through transformation. The material world is just a place to interact with each other. It's really shitty right now because people have created a terrible world. It's really trashy, but we can clean it up. We can create a new world. And people think of it like a dream. People, if you're having a nightmare, what do you want to do? You want to wake up from the dream. Well, this world right now is like a dream, but it's like a nightmare. So people want to escape. But if you're having a good dream, if you're having a wonderful dream, do you want to escape? No, you want to keep dreaming. It's a great dream. You're having fun. We can create this world from a nightmare into a dream. So the process, because people might be thinking, oh man, this sounds horrible. We have to go through all this. But the point is that it doesn't have to be horrible. We can transform this world into whatever we want, from a nightmare into a dream. So the process of growth and understanding becomes something enjoyable and fun, like playing a video game. So it's so important to realize that it's not about escape. It's not about running away. It's not about hacking the code. It's about realizing that we need to transform ourselves and transform the world and step into our power. We are the programmers. We are the gods. We are the all. We are the absolute. And things like simulation theory is just another religion. I think it's, one of the most funniest things. Well, not funny if it's actually done, but like creating a monument to try and get the simulators' attention. That's exactly what they were doing in religious rituals when they would create altars to God and sacrifice animals and people on altars to try and get the attention of the gods. So this is something that we want to stay away from. This is not a simulated reality. We don't need to get attention to the programmers. We don't need to look for a savior. We don't need to jump twice, go back 3 times, eat an apple and expect the code to break. No, it's what's been said for thousands of years. Know thyself. Understand what you are, and you will know that you are the universe and the gods. And then we will be able to create whatever we so will by working together, by transforming ourselves and transforming the world. So we are the programmers, we are the creators. So my friends, I hope you enjoy this. I have a lot more videos on this topic. If you want to hear more about quantum entanglement, watch the video that's previous, a couple videos back. It says shocking quantum discovery, I think it says. About it's a really good one. I'd recommend checking that out. But we've gone for a while. This has been a long one. Please like and subscribe. Like I said, it helps spread this information around. This is important info. And please follow me on Spotify, Dawn of the New Earth. That also helps spread this information. My new book comes out May 16th, and support my work if you want to help me grow on patreon.com/MorgueOfficial or tier 2 or higher right here on YouTube to get access to our members only videos. We're having a new members only video right now called Does Your Higher Self Actually Plan Your Life Before You're Born? That's what we're talking about. So it's going to be good, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports. I appreciate all of you. Big shout out to Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, the Halloween Mom, DB, Nusalina, Eric, Christopher, Joel, Phillips, Luke, Thomas, Ryan, Antoine, and everyone else. Thank you very much.